All right, welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast. Today we have on a special guest, Mr. Travis Moran, who is, if you watch any FLW lives, you might have seen him there. He commentates for FLW. He's also made a lot of stuff in past for Lucky Tackle Box, and he's also a co-founder of STIX, a rod company that he's created. So many of you may know who Travis Moran is if you keep up with the industry. You watch a lot of competitive bass fishing. You know of Mr. Travis Moran. So I'm excited to get Travis on here. Before we get into today's podcast, I want to give a huge shout out to Douglas Outdoors for sponsoring the podcast. Douglas has been a huge help to me making premium rods that can suit just about any of your needs, any of your niches and small little techniques. There is an incredible line that they create called the X Matrix, which is a premium rod that has the best strength to weight ratio in the market. They also make the LRS series, which is just a little bit below what the X Matrix would be when you put it on the totem pole of performing rods. Just a little bit softer. I love throwing the LRS for a lot of my rods that I throw with have treble hooks. Anytime I'm throwing treble hooks, I like to throw the LRS because with that little bit less components than the X Matrix, it makes it a little bit softer. So that way, I think I can keep those fish pinned a little bit better on the LRS series. That's kind of how I like to do things. But anything else, power fishing wise, even finesse, I like to use the X Matrix. But anything, like I said, if I have treble hooks, LRS, that's the way to go. That's my personal preference. If you guys have any questions, go to douglasoutdoors.com. You can contact them. But you can also contact me over social media at Serious Angler on my personal pages. You can also see me using them in all my YouTube, not all my, but many of my recent YouTube videos. I've been using all Douglas rods. If you have any questions, please let me know. I am fully willing to talk about it at any point in time. But without further ado, Mr. Travis Moran, let's get him on the podcast. All right, we are recording. Mr. Travis Moran, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. Happy to be here, enjoying life during these challenging times.
Yeah, it looks like you're enjoying life pretty good. It looks sunny and gorgeous out by you.
Yes, actually, I'm way behind you in time zones here. I'm actually all the way out in Hawaii right now. We are quarantining out here. My wife's parents split time out here, and so they live out here half the year. And so we're out here. We actually can't go out. We can't go outside the house. We have to quarantine for 2 weeks, and that's our whole vacation. But we've been quarantining, laying low in Monterey where I live, and so this has just been a nice, pleasant experience, just quarantining out here and get to hang out with family.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. Especially in Hawaii. I mean, it kind of sucks you can't leave the house, but I mean, there could be worse places to be stuck in your backyard.
Yes, and that was the idea, is that we were kind of bummed that we weren't going to be able to kind of explore and do all the fun stuff that we do when we come out here. But at the end of the day, it's still a nice time quarantining out here, where it's we're outside all day long, hanging out by the pool and everything, and just kind of having a lazy, laid back day.
Yeah, you really can't beat that. No, 100%. So where when you're not in Hawaii, where's home for you?
Carmel, California. It's actually along the coast. If you were to split California in half, we're right in the middle, right there. We consider ourselves Northern California because California is really split up between Northern and Southern, and we like to say that we've got that Northern California mentality, a little bit more laid back. Where you get down to Southern California, there's a lot of people, and it gets just the hustle bustle. You always got to be moving, and that's just not my personality. I like to kind of take things easy and just enjoy the moment.
Yeah, I hear that. So what's your home like? What's your home body of water then?
That's there really isn't much waterways around me, and so I'm used to being on the road traveling to go find good water and everything, and so that's where California Delta for a while was one of my home bodies of water, and then I actually ended up living there for two different periods of my life for 2 years at a time. And then Clear Lake has also played a big role in fishing for me. Is with one of the first road trips I ever went to in high school was up to Clear Lake to go explore this crazy place I had read about, and then it's always been kind of a mainstay. And I would like to say that's my home lake. That's where I definitely feel most comfortable. That's where I've shot a lot of the content that I create and everything, is because that's just a lake that has so much to offer. It can be consistent when you find the bite and everything. And so and it's a wonderful place and an absolutely amazing fishery.
Yeah, I remember watching your jerkbait video. I believe that was on Clear Lake. Because I remember years ago, I was getting frustrated because I wasn't getting the bites that I wanted on a jerkbait. So I had gone to YouTube and I was watching a bunch of stuff, reading a bunch of stuff, and that was one of the videos was yours. I believe it was a Lucky Tackle Box video, perhaps, that you did a jerkbait video on. So I remember that. That's the one I remember with some of the content.
Nice.
But I'm headed to Clear Lake, hopefully. I mean, I don't know if it's going to happen this year now, but maybe we'll shoot for next spring. But I work with Douglas Rods. So Fred Cantawi, I don't know if you know the name. I'm sure you might because I think he's former FLW. But he lives up by Clear Lake, so I'm going to come visit him, and we're going to put some of Douglas Rods to work out in Clear Lake. But
very cool. And that's Clear Lake is a great testing ground for that. And once again, it's got such diversity. You know, you don't have to just you can go up shallow flip. They've got docks, tulies, deep rock piles. There's anything you like to do, you can go find that technique and do it and actually catch quality size fish doing so. And that once again is why I always went and filmed videos up there, is because if I had to film a lipless crankbait video and then a tube video and a topwater video, I could do all those and find the ideal conditions to go do each of those, so I could really show kind of the ideal situation for each one of those techniques.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome that you can kind of like, we kind of, I'm in New York, I'm in the heart of all the Finger Lakes in between Erie and Ontario. So I kind of have a similarity to that. I mean, you with Clear Lake you can put so many applications to use on one body of water, but for me, I can go 30 minutes north and go flip, and I could go 30 minutes to the, my west and then go drop shot, and then to the right and I can go try to fish a ledge. Like there's a bunch of different stuff that we can do. But not in one lake. And that's awesome.
Well, how you do it, it is kind of the same setup as Clear Lake, because realistically, when I film at Clear Lake, I'll put in at one, as the launch ramps it's one of the only places in California where launch ramps are free. So we'll put in one place, go film in one video, and then pull out, drive around the other side of the lake. And, especially if the wind is going one way, you just drive the other end, you can find, better conditions and stuff to film in. And so it really is like you driving to different bodies of water. We're kind of driving to different areas of the lake. We'll pull the boat out. We'll at least pull the boat out once in a day, sometimes twice, to kind of, we start the morning one place, go to the other side of the lake to film some other stuff, and then come back and end the evening back where we started and everything. So pulling the boat out is no big deal.
I never actually realized how big Clear Lake was.
It's one of our biggest lakes out here. It's not quite the size. I mean, I'm pretty impressed when I travel back east at some of these bigger waterways of what big really is. You have a few hour drive to one end to the other. Clear Lake, I would say from end to end, it might be 30 minutes. And, that's on good conditions. If you've got decent water that you can open it up on, you can make it from one end to the other in about 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes. But then if the wind picks up and you get the narrows, you get as rough a water as it gets in any lake, and that can really put a kink in your plans.
Yeah, 100%. So, dude, before we get too deep into the podcast here, for anybody who may not know, and if you guys have never watched an FLW live, then you need to tune in. But talk a little bit about yourself, and then kind of how you got into fishing, who kind of installed that passion in you.
Absolutely. The stuff I do now, I kind of in fishing, I've kind of got the mentality that whatever interests me, I kind of pursue. When I grew up, I love fishing. I don't come from a fishing family. My parents don't fish or anything. And I remember Lake Shasta is one of the huge reservoirs up here in California. And my parents used to rent a houseboat every summer and just go hang out and relax for a couple of weeks. And I was the oldest of four siblings. And at the docks one time, my dad got me like a Mickey Mouse rod, some hot dogs. It's just something for me to just something to keep me occupied, because it was all, you got four kids, you got to just give them stuff to do. And so I was throwing that hot dog and I ended up catching carp and catfish and ended up being literally just stoked about it. And that's all I wanted to do. And so anytime from then on, my dad would, my parents were real good about spending time with each one of the kids and stuff. So my dad would come to me, okay, Travis, what do you want to do? We're going to go spend some time together tomorrow. What do you want to go do with your dad? And every single time we'd be fishing. And I got to give a lot of credit to my dad, because He didn't want to go fishing. He wanted to, go play basketball with me, go surf, do some other things that he found interesting. But he would still take me out fishing. We'd go to the tackle store and he'd ask him what bait to use and what kind of setups, and make sure that's what I had to do. And then as that grew, as I got older, my mom would just literally take myself and my brothers and just drop us off the lake and say, okay, I'll be here, later on tonight. And we'd be there for 12, 14 hours. She'd pull up to the lake and honk, and we'd be on the other side of the lake. We'd hear mom honking, and we'd come running back around. And that was how we spent all our, free time, was just getting dropped off at lakes. And I guess it was a little bit different time back then. Just you were allowed to leave your kids. You wouldn't be arrested back then if you just left your kids, because we were way too young to be left in a lake. But fishermen have always been real nice people, and they would always loan us tackle. They would see that we had no idea what we were doing and give us some hooks or some bait and let us net their fish and things like that. And so we always made an adventure of it. And this was before cell phones too. So it was, you had communication was a difficult thing. And so my mom might wait at the lake for an hour. She gets there, honks, we hear her, and we're like, oh man, we just got to where we wanted to fish. And we'd still fish for another hour and hear mom honking. All right, we got to start getting back, and take us an hour to get all the way back over there. And so that was the fun memories that I have growing up. And then the other part of that is that we never caught any fish. Like back then, it was more about just the thrill. Well, I don't know if you guys can hear it. We got lots of family quarantine here too. This was kind of where everyone met. My in-laws all met here at the house to quarantine together. So you're going to hear kids screaming and people yelling and all kinds of chaos throughout this whole thing. But so that's just a pre-warning there.
You're good.
But anyway, so that was fishing to me wasn't actually catching fish. It was thinking we were about to catch a whole lot of fish. It was going out there, not catching any fish, but maybe feeling like, oh, I had one on, or we had a blow up. We had something, almost caught a fish. We'd go back, we'd watch more Bill Dance and Roland Martin TV shows, and then we'd be 100% certain that we figured out what we did wrong. And the next time we were going to catch the lake record in 1 million fish, we'd go out there and we'd strike out again, but we'd get close and we'd feel like, oh, the next time. And that was what always kind of kept driving me, was that idea of doing better, of correcting what we did and then adding to that and coming back a better, more experienced fisherman ready to actually take advantage of the opportunities.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's the one thing that I would say 98% of us anglers, right? A very high number. We just do it because we love to learn and get better at, catching fish, and each trip trying to capitalize on the opportunities that we're presented with. That's the one thing that keeps us going, which is pretty cool. But so has it always been bass fishing for you then? I mean, I'm assuming, seeing as though you obviously have a big affiliation with FLW, that it's, homes for you, but it has always been bass.
It started out actually anything. I think as most fishermen start off, right? Whatever's tugging on the other end of the line. And when I was, I want to say I started when I was probably like 4 or 5 years old. And up until I think I was like 13 or 14, I would just catch whatever was biting. And that was a lot of times trout. We have a whole lot of rainbow trout out west. And that's kind of a fun little easy thing to do. You just cast your line out and wait. And then at a small little reservoir down in Southern California, I had this little grub that I started throwing out and catching a bunch of bass. And that was my first time that I was like, holy cow, look at these green fish. And I was like, these are the ones I see on TV. These are the ones that all the TV shows are about. And at that point I started, because I was kind of getting to a point where I thought that maybe there weren't bass out that way. Those guys were all fishing in Texas and Florida. And I thought maybe that was what they catch out there. And we catch trout out west. Like I said, I didn't really have a lot of people that were teaching me about fishing. And so it was kind of everything I just learned off of TV shows. And my parents let me sign up to North American Fishermen. So I would get their magazine and kind of just learn little tidbits throughout that. But I really had no real source of information that was local to actually what this bass fishing was all about. So once I found out bass fishing, and once I found out there was bass out west, then from then on, it became all about chasing the bass.
That's awesome. Did you ever, what age were you when you started kind of entering the competitive side of fishing?
In high school, it was, so my high school, Billy, how old are you?
I am 22 now. I had to think about
22.
that for a second.
Okay. So I'm 37. Now, I don't know if you can imagine a world without the internet. Okay, so the internet was created when I was in high school. So there was some really big changes going on in the world when I was in high school in terms of just how the access to information and just how the world interacted with each other. And so we used to just have AOL where you would chat with people and just have funny conversations with random strangers and stuff. And so I explored all these different things. All of a sudden, I came across bass fishing and bass fishing clubs. And I had never even realized that could even exist. So I found a bass fishing club, the Santa Cruz Bass Fishing Club, and they had tournaments. And I remember being like, "Oh my gosh, they compete for bass fishing." I had seen the Elite Series, I'd seen that stuff on television. I knew that existed on a huge way, far away scale. But this was the first time that I had seen an actual tournament fishing existed in my local area, and so I called them up. There was a phone number. Called them up and asked if I could just, is there a way I could just be on your guys' boat and just like watch you guys tournament fish? Because I didn't think this was something I was allowed to do. I thought it was just for professional people doing it. And the person called me back and said, "Hey, no, you can. We have a partner that's for you. There's someone with a boat looking for a partner," and so that got me so excited, but I still then had to convince my parents to let me go out and start bass fishing on these tournaments. I think I was like 16 at the time. And so I remember they were like, "Okay, well, let's just talk to your parents and, make sure it's okay with them." So I remember this day I handed the phone to my mom and I was so excited. I was going to be a professional bass fisherman. I am going to be, this is the start. I'm done. I'm going to beat every one of these guys and become the greatest bass fisherman to live. And I handed my phone to my mom. And it was this guy Jimbo, and he was from Oakdale, Inland, California, and he had the real deep voice. And so my mom gets on and goes, "Hey, is this Jim?" "Yeah, this is Jimbo." And she goes, "Now explain to me why I'm supposed to let my 16-year-old boy go out in a boat with some stranger he met while talking on the internet," and basically accuses him of being a pedophile. And I remember literally being like, "Oh my God. My fishing career is over before it started. She just screwed me. Oh no!" And Jimbo, all I heard was this deep chuckle on the other side. He just starts laughing at her, and apparently that was all that my mom needed, was just some kind of just reassurance. And this guy, she could tell in his laugh he was a good guy, and so went out there, fished with him my first tournament. And it was everything I could have imagined. It was all these people that loved bass fishing, all these people that were grown-ups that had boats and that really like spent their money and time in the sport that I absolutely loved and have been doing by myself for so long. And so once I saw that, I realized that was kind of my place in this world, was being around these types of people. And I ended up being partners with Jimbo for, I think, another 10 years. And that really started the whole part of the tournament bass fishing side of things.
That's awesome, dude. There's a similar kind of story to that I've actually seen that no one's really talked about, at least in the local areas. I was out fishing. I go off my kayak, and I have been for a while, just because I'm recently just out of college. Can't exactly afford a boat right now, just with loans and everything. And I wasn't growing up into like a bass fishing family. Like we'd go out on my dad's bayliner that we had. We'd usually go out just to leisurely boat. But I got into fishing. My dad had fished a little bit, and we were the people that would go out, find a grass flat, and throw sluggos, and that's all we would throw. And it was to the point where, so we obviously didn't grow up in bass boats. I got into kayak, but I'm kayaking. My point, getting back to my point, I'm on my kayak, and I see this kid who's fishing off his dock. So I go around him, so I get out of his way, and there's a boat that starts coming behind me, and this guy catches like a 3 or 4 pounder right in front of this kid, and the kid's like, "Oh man, like I wish I could catch fish like that." And his parents are out, on their yard by the dock, and the guy on the boat had told him, he's like, "Go ask your parents, and you can come out and fish on the boat with me if you want." And his dad's like, "Heck yeah, go with him," or whatever. And like just full willing to let his kid just wander off on a boat. And now to this day, like that kid was, I want to say maybe 13 or 14. He's in college now. But they still fish we have like a weekly, not like a working man is what they call them. So 3-hour nightly tournaments. And now they're still partners to this day, which is the coolest thing ever.
That's amazing.
Like that. Yeah.
It is. What I found, this wasn't what I was searching for intentionally. But what I've found now with the fishing world, being able to kind of look at it as a whole now is that you have a lot of passionate people, and in life, people that have found a passion, something that really gives them a purpose, that helps them get up in the day, that fills their thoughts during the day, gives them motivation to go work and make money. And they know where they can get happiness from is that fishing is the passion that they love, that they become better people. And in the fishing industry, you have a lot of people that know their passion, and that really is contagious. That really it affects other people around them, and they're better people because of it. And it is a lot of fun to be part of the fishing world.
Yeah, and even that split second in your mind that you say, "Do you want to come fishing with me?" That can kind of change somebody's outlook and their drive. And like literally, if you think about it, somebody's split decision to go fish, and that their experience fishing can change their entire life.
Yes.
It's an incredible thing.
Now, I've been able to actually do a lot of that same stuff. There is a lot of times when I'll pull up to the lake and there'll be kids fishing on the shore. They'll come say what's up and everything. And I always say, hey, you guys want to go out fishing for a little bit? And if their parents let them say yes, then I'll always pull them out, go out fishing, and give them some of the lures that I was using and everything. Because I do remember what it was like standing on the shore and being like, oh my gosh, what if I could be in one of those boats? That would be the most amazing thing ever. And it really wasn't even about catching a fish. It was like literally just kind of being in that lifestyle for just to say, getting a taste of what it's like to drive in a boat real quick and fish from a deck where you're not just like, hunkered under some trees trying to get one cast. It's not even about trying to find the fish. It's really just being able to make one cast to a spot. And so I always try to look back at, what I was thinking and what was important to me back then, and try to bring that and create more of that to people that I kind of relate with, or I see the same thing in them.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I would love to do the same thing and be able to, create that experience. But for me, it's kind of hard to get two people in a kayak. It can be kind of tough.
Sure. And giving them also giving people the lures though. I got into with Lucky Tackle Box. It was a great situation because I had access to so many different lures and things. And so I always had just a ton of tackle coming in, and I was able to always give it away. And so anytime kids would come up to me on the docks and stuff, I would go, hey guys, go into my boat. You can pick out any lure, pick out one lure for you. And then they'd be like, oh, my brother loves to fish. Okay, well, pick them out one lure for your brother as well. And they could cut it off my rods if they wanted to. They could go through the entire boat and find one lure. And it was always fun because they got to explore the boat and pull off that one bait. And so, the kayak, you can do the same stuff. You can say, hey, here's what I was catching them on. Give them a bag of whatever you were catching them on. With fishing, it's all about confidence too. So if I'm not catching anything, you come by and you're like, hey, I was catching. Yeah, I caught a few today. This is the bait. They were catching them on. Just throw this around, brush. Oh, sweet. It gives you like a new set of energy. It gives you it resets you and gets you positive again. And you may go out and actually catch fish that day.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's cool to be able to create opportunities like that. But speaking of opportunities, I'm curious, how'd you end up getting involved from that point on to getting involved with FLW?
FLW was a very long process. And when my brothers went to Chico State, they probably graduated 12 years ago, maybe. I don't even know. A long time ago. All of a sudden, it starts blending. Whenever bass fishing started the collegiate level for the FLW, that's when my brothers were at Chico State. And that's a school out west. Mm-hmm. And they founded the Chico State bass team. My brothers are twins. So one was the president, one was the vice president of the club. And from there, they brought a bunch of different anglers in and really had fun with this brand new collegiate bass fishing that was paying out huge payouts. That's when the National Guard was involved, and National Guard was putting a ton of money. And the National Guard wasn't putting the money in the FLW on the tour side. They were really putting a lot of their money into the college level because they wanted to. They were trying to recruit more college educated recruits, and so that was one of their ways of doing that. And so the payouts were like $10,000 to the team that won, and then $10,000 to the school. So, wow. So if Chico State won a tournament, they'd get $10,000 to their club, and the school would get $10,000 donated to them. So the schools got behind this. Well, at Chico State, they were like, we don't actually have a way we can receive this money. So the team, if you just give us receipts, we'll give you as much money as you show us receipts back. So they'd go buy rods, all their expenses, the tournaments, all that stuff, and then Chico State would just give them a check for that amount of money. And so they were living large on the Chico, on the bass fishing money when they were in college. They were throwing parties with it. They were buying everybody fishing rods. It was the heyday of collegiate bass fishing. And out west, it wasn't as competitive as back east. You know, you guys, bass fishing is like in the DNA back east. Out west, they're very passionate anglers. I will argue anyone who tries to say that they are more of a bass fisherman than myself or any of the West Coast guys. But at the end of the day, when I go back east, every single front yard has a boat parked in it. And out west, that is not the case. There is, there's just a lot more things you can do in the outdoors or just hobbies in general out there. And I think that just distracts from the sport of bass fishing a little bit. But we still have, California is one of the most populated bass fishing states in the U.S. So it is, we do have bass fishing, but it just isn't like, most people don't bass fish when you talk to them in California. It's a weird thing. Yeah. And whereas the second you start traveling east, everyone bass fishes. So, so they were able to win a lot of money doing that. Chico State, they were both studying business. So we all got together and wanted to create a bass fishing business. That was a one-a-day sales site that we would have one crazy lure up for sale that was, you might have 100 of them that day, offered at like 80% off. And so the idea was to get a lot of traffic to the site. We could sell advertisements on that. We actually never made a dime off of it. There were a lot of things that went wrong. It was our first experience in the business side. But off of that, we started creating videos and content. And one of the things that we created was a podcast for the college anglers. So back then, the college tournaments actually were on the last day of, I think it was the EverStart series back then. It's now the Toyota series. Last year was the Costa series. So that circuit, the top 10 would fish the final day, right? Well, then the college anglers would also fish on that final day. And they would pay some of the anglers, the pro anglers that didn't make it, to stay with their boat and take out the college anglers. So it was a great system. And so what we would do is we created a podcast where we would interview these pros while they're out pre-fishing, and they would talk about the general conditions, what was working at that lake, because the college anglers weren't able to pre-fish at all. So all the college anglers would listen to this podcast about all these anglers, what the anglers were doing, what the water temps were, clarity, what lures, just the general stuff going on. And we really created a captive audience with all these collegiate guys getting ready to go fish that lake. And we were doing that, and it caught on so quickly that FLW actually reached out and said, hey, you guys need some more contacts. We'll give you some more names, because we were just interviewing guys that we knew and then seeing if they had any buddies they knew at other lakes throughout the country that we could interview. And so FLW started just giving us, hey, here's some guys that we work with a lot. You can interview them. And we interviewed guys like Justin Lucas, Justin Atkins. We had so many big names, Brandon McMillan, that were, this was 10, 12 years ago. And these guys really went on to have really successful careers. And so that was the first interaction with FLW. Well, at the time, they had Justin Lucas was one of the hosts. They had Jason Harper as one of the hosts. And they were expanding so fast that they were overworking these guys. So they reached out to me and said, Travis, you've been doing this podcast stuff. Would you be interested in being one of the hosts for the college tournaments? And so I said, absolutely. That would be a dream come true. So they flew me out, started training me to relieve Jason Harper of some of his events, because he was doing walleye, redfish, all these different events they were having. Yeah. And so I was going to start doing stuff with Justin Lucas on the college side. And so I got the job. They hired me. They were training me. And then National Guard backed out. They were no longer allowed to just pump money into all these different sponsors, including NASCAR and stuff. And so they were really, they had to pull back on where they actually threw all this money. So FLW had to kind of reconfigure how they were going to do their events. And so I was put on hold. And so it's like, okay, you aren't going to start till mid-season. And they kept pushing back my start date. And then 8 years later, the producer calls me and goes, Travis, are you ready to start your job? And so that was, obviously he was kidding around, but and I said, yeah. And that's when FLW Live was first starting. They're like, well, come on out. We're going to start this FLW Live thing, and we want you to be part of it. And so I got to be part of that. And that was, I think we're now in our 4th year of doing that. And that's been a lot of fun. And that was, and that's now is what it is.
Yeah. That's awesome. I had no idea that Justin Lucas was a commentator at one point.
Justin Lucas,
awesome.
yes. There's a lot of history. There is a lot of just basically weaving of anglers throughout this sport that figured out different paths and whatever path they could to stay within the industry and weave their way through it. So Justin Lucas was he was the co-host to Jason Harper for the college tournaments, and he was the poster boy of collegiate fishing. And he started out west fishing FLW ever start events, and I think he won like a handful. He did really well on the co-angler side, and then launched his career. That actually was the reason he was able to travel back east and start fishing the tour. And then he's slowly he's now fished everything. He went fished elites. Now he's fishing the Bass Pro Tour. So. Yeah. And that all started, out west on the EverStart events.
That's awesome. Yeah, he's been one that I've the way he fishes. I try to pay attention. When he posts content or when he's on a live. When they're showcasing him, is just because he seems like one of those anglers, and you can correct me on it if I'm wrong, but one that doesn't really have a specific technique or niche that he's comfortable in. He seems to be very versatile in a lot of respects. So that's why I pay attention to him. But that's so cool. I didn't know he commentated. That's awesome.
Yeah, he's put in the work, man. A lot of these anglers you see out there that just and this happens from every region of the country, right? All of a sudden you see an angler on the big stage, and you're like, awesome. These guys all have a backstory of that they scratched, clawed, and did whatever they could to make it to where they finally all of a sudden we're in front of everybody, right? And it's always fun. Like what you do with these shows kind of really highlights where these guys came from, and you'll see that. Even though everyone's stories are very different, they're very much the same. It was all people just trying to take advantage of whatever opportunities came their way and figured out this path. It's not a straight line, this crazy path that brought them to where they are in the fishing world now.
Yeah, and that's like you just mentioned. This is awesome because I get to hear stories just like that. Like I would have had no idea if probably it would have taken me years to realize, probably fumbling through old YouTube tournament videos to see that Justin Lucas commentates. It's cool to kind of hear the backstory and backgrounds of what anglers grew up with who had their hands involved in what. It's just awesome. Because when it comes to the history of tournament angling, there's a lot that I don't know. And so for me, listening to Bass Talk Live I thoroughly enjoy that because I learned so much about the history of competitive bass fishing, which I think is still important to trying to make competitive bass fishing better now. But so how has it been adjusting? I'm sure you guys are still making huge adjustments now, but from pre-COVID to now, are you guys making any big changes with the live or how tournaments are being run? What's going on over there?
They had one last event right when this COVID stuff hit. They had one just kind of where the world wasn't locked down. It was just this kind of question mark. And so I made the decision. They said, Travis, you don't want to come. We'll figure out something. Because we're going to have the event. We've been okayed by the town to have the event, but they weren't completely sure how this was all going to play out. But so I made the choice to fly out. I wore a mask. I wiped everything down and flew out, had that one last event, which was odd. We had there's 11 people that are in the other room when we're doing our live studio in Benton, Kentucky. So they were all spanned out through the hallways and everything. Everything was tried to space as much as possible. Todd and I sat in the actual studio room. We were separated from each other. No one came in or out except for Peyote, the producer. And we really just kind of tried to distance ourselves. And then, once we went home, that's when everything closed down. That's when everything got real serious. And we've kind of just been waiting to see what we're going to move forward with. And the FLW, the one thing with FLW is they've always been a very family-oriented business. They take care of their own. They really they foster a lot. They start and foster a lot of careers. They encourage people to move to whatever next thing they think is what their path in fishing is, and so they've been a great place for a lot of anglers to begin and make a huge career for themselves. And so watching them kind of figure out, okay, what do we got to do? We got to keep jobs going. They do actually employ a lot of people. There's a lot of bass fishermen that rely on making a living on the FLW, the Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit now. And so they've just been kind of just taking in all the information, and they made and so now obviously MLF owns FLW, And so together they made a decision. They came out with some ideas, and they made a decision on that they're going to combine for the super tournaments. And they're going to talk to the different towns and see who still is going to embrace people coming in, and what their criteria is going to be to make sure that everyone is safe. And they found that, and they found a moving forward point. And if anything changes, they will change as well. But the idea was to still have these Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit events, but then to offer the Bass Pro Tour anglers a chance of coming in and fishing those as well, and then upping the payouts. So there's now just way bigger payouts, a lot more money on the table, and so so these fishermen are not missing opportunities to make money now. The existing Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit anglers aren't dividing the same amount of money between these new anglers. It's actually more in the pot, and a lot of these Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit guys, you got a lot of young anglers trying to make a name for themselves. And there's no better way to make a name for yourself than knocking off and beating some of the top anglers in the entire world. And so this really is a win-win for everyone, and especially the people that want to watch fishing, because now we get to sit back and watch the best anglers in the entire world battle it out, 5-fish format, which we're all a little bit more used to. I really like the new MLF style, and I like that that's where the sport's going. But as we're transitioning, it's kind of a fun thing to kind of go back to the roots of everyone and get these anglers that have really been doing the whole MLF format for a number of years. We're going to watch them do their first big time 5-fish limit tournament they've done in a long time.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I listened to Bass Talk Live, but I listened to a plethora of podcasts. It's taken over. Like I can't remember the last time I listened to music for over a few songs. But a lot of these guys that they've had on through MLF, and they talk about the super tournaments, and they're like, yeah, I got to go out and practice, like live welling fish, because I haven't done it in so long, and it's just going to be interesting to see, like, are any of them going to make mistakes? Like, are they going to throw fish back on accident? Like, it's going to be, I mean, obviously I'm sure those mistakes wouldn't happen, but it's just interesting to see, watching them go from one format back to another. But you've been in the industry for a while, so do you think any of these trails are going to come up with I mean, I know FLW is doing it in a sense where you're doing a combination where certain bodies of water or certain days of the tournament you're doing numbers, MLF format, and then some days you're doing best 5. Do you see more doing that now that there's interest in both?
Now, okay, so I love seeing the progression of bass fishing. One of the draws a little bit later in life. So bass fishing in the beginning was all about catching fish and thinking about what lures next. As I went to when I went to college, studied business. They didn't have college fishing at the time, so I played basketball, a little bit more traditional sport. And as I learned business, I started looking at bass fishing not only as catching fish, but as like seeing opportunities and seeing, oh my gosh, this sport is so far behind the rest of the world. And so getting to see opportunities and then try to actually make those things happen has been what's really been a driving factor, and really been a new element that's been introduced to me in the bass fishing world and kept me interested and excited about it. And that's what I enjoy about where bass fishing is right now. This whole new format, the MLF style, everything counts. I love the way they are trying to progress this sport. There are a lot of things that are just a little bit behind. That just the treatment of the fish and everything that we do. Yeah, they still live and everything, but it always needs to be increasing. It always needs. You never say something is wrong. You just need to always be progressing and saying, can we do it a little bit more right? And what MLF is doing that. They're progressing the sport along, and now that they have FLW, they aren't wiping FLW out. They're still acknowledging that 5-fish limit is where we all came from. That is what we do, and how they're marrying the two. We are going to see more and more of how that evolves. Technology changes by the day, and the way that we are able to interact, the way we're able to cover these events change every single year are completely different. The new set of cameras we have, the new set of live elements that we're able to bring in. And so as we see all this increase, they're going to keep applying it to how this new style is evolving. And we're going to see that. We're going to be right along for the ride. And bass fishing in another 5 years, another 10 years is going to look totally different. And we're going to consume it totally different. We're going to be on the boat watching it, live from every angle. We're going to have multiple cameras on these boats. There is so much positive stuff going on. And I always, let people know, the 5-fish limit, I know we love that, but be open-minded. You guys,
yeah.
for us to get to this new thing, we've got to be like, all right, we're going to go down some things that are a little tough. Maybe they aren't even the right way, but as we slowly manage what we're going to have in 10 years, it's going to be an amazing, amazing thing that we're going to be able to take more care of our fisheries. We're going to be able to treat these fish better, and the sport will be able to grow to even more people.
Yeah, 100%. I think just as the people, the biggest mistake a lot of people give is not giving things time to, give it a chance. You know what I mean? And I think what's awesome about what's going on right now is it gives anglers an option to go after a certain style or format that fits the way they fish, right? So I think that's what's pretty cool. And I think in respects to MLF, watching them put the minimum weight,
yes,
that it has turned things. I think it turned things for the better for them. It's been awesome.
Yep. And there's a lot. I mean, year one there was a lot of things that they evolved from, right? That the 1 pound limit was just like, it made me dizzy seeing all the fish catches. They were just bounce, 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 and it was just chaotic. But it just needed to be corrected. There was a correct. I was suggesting that they make a 10 fish limit or something like that. Because the 5 fish limit, that was decided because people can only have 5 fish on their boat. That's the limit at most states, is you can only keep 5 bass. So that was where the 5 fish limit. It didn't come from any tournament strategy. They didn't build up a tournament to where that was what they wanted. That just came from what the limit. And that's why team tournaments sometimes were 7 fish, because you were allowed to keep more fish in the live well. Well, now that you don't have fish in the live well, you need to say, okay, how do we erase the board and come up with something that's more ideal for the sport? So I thought, let's do a 10 fish limit. But I think that they nailed it on the head with doing the 2 pound minimum, or the kind of adjusting minimum that they have. And it's created more, you're seeing more of a strategy now evolve. Guys are now, storyline that they're talking about, what kind of fish they're trying to go after, what their strategy is, not just, hey, find a school of little dinks and just start plowing away at them with a Ned head, and so that really took things to another level, and really, get the speed wobbles when you start off, that really stabilized them moving forward.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I mean, it's been an interesting ride. Obviously, that's only year 2, right?
Yep.
Second, yeah. So it's far from being perfect, but you're never perfect in your first few years. No organization, no professional league, no idea, no product is perfect right off the get-go. So I'm super excited within, like you said, the next 5 years or so to see what happens with it, see what happens with professional fishing as a whole. It's just awesome to adapt. I just like watching in general. Today I had split screen up of Eufaula and then Kissimmee, and watching all of that. I'm just so happy as a fan and as somebody who works in the industry, somebody who just loves bass fishing, that I finally have my sport to watch. There's people that yell at, I say all the time on here, how there's people that love to yell at the TV when they're watching football. I yell at the TV when I'm watching fishing. That's my football. Like, it's just it's a different realm, but I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, and now we have a whole, we're now bringing up all these new young anglers under a different world. I couldn't even conceive this existing when I was starting out, but now these younger anglers can go on YouTube and watch some of their favorite YouTubers, whether it's the Guggen guys doing crazy little fun stuff, or whether it's, instructional stuff. They're getting the Informative Fisherman or the Fluke Master. There's so many ways to learn on the YouTube side. Then you can take that and you can go look at the top anglers, and you can watch the different stuff. You've got the obviously the MLF, you've got the Elite Series, you've got the Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit. There is so much content for you to watch now and learn from that. You can choose your path. There's a lot of different avenues now to become an angler that makes a living from chasing bass.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting now because, I hope they're still able to compete, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with it, because you have FLW, MLF, and Bass, but the National Professional Fishing League, I believe it's called, that's going to be an interesting one that they're trying to, obviously create, and I don't know if they've even released a schedule or when that's supposed to begin. I'm not sure yet. I haven't looked into it too much, but that's going to be interesting to see how the industry can hold all those trails. But
yep. Well, when you always have these passionate anglers, right? We're not going anywhere. We're going to be here tomorrow. Whatever circuit is here, we're going to find a way forward. Yeah. So that really, if you have all the people willing, then you will always get circuits. So if these circuits don't work out, another one will come up, and the more people are trying new things, the more chance this sport has to move forward. The only thing I get a little bit discouraged sometimes when people are trying to make things back the way they were, when they go, oh man, we're getting back to what tournaments used to be. In life, that no longer exists. If you're trying to do things the way they used to be, then it's not going to work out. And a lot of people hate hearing that because they have great memories of the past. That they can look back, and that's what they usually gain inspiration from. But you need to take those, you need to adapt them and move them forward. And so I've seen a lot of tournament circuits come back up out west here that are promising the past, and that's not what we're looking for as fishermen. We're looking for the sport needs to move forward and needs to keep progressing and adapting.
Yeah, 100%. So speaking about moving forward and looking ahead, is there a career goal you have in fishing? Like, is there something you're striving for, or are you loving where you're at?
Well, actually, the only career goal I ever made, now that when you say that, isn't something I wake up in the mornings thinking about anymore, but was just to be the greatest bass fisherman ever lived. That's the last time I thought about a career goal in bass fishing. That was when I was high school, college, just dreaming of the moonshots. But now, the career goal is just to kind of stay in fishing, is just to keep being inspired and excited about new ideas. The jobs, all the things that I've done, all the jobs I've had in fishing didn't exist before I started in that job. So when we started our little one-a-day sales site, I guess that wasn't really a job because we didn't make money. So that wasn't that didn't actually give a career. But that making videos and things actually then led to the FLW stuff. That led to me creating content for Lucky Tackle Box and another subscription company, Tackle Grab, and so when I started making little how-to videos, there is some of the most god-awful videos you have ever seen that are still on the internet. And that was the beginning of me making videos. I wanted to make fishing videos. I thought that would be fun. This thing YouTube was starting, and it was, and we just started throwing videos up there talking about how to catch. The first show we did was Easy 5, how to catch the easiest 5 fish in a lake. And it was just us gooping around to music, dancing, and having a good time, and trying to show some information. And that ended up being, what caught the eye of people that said, hey, you should try this guy, Travis. He might be able to help you out with this. And my first paying gig making videos was for a company called Tackle Grab. And they paid me to make how-to videos for every one of the products that came in the subscription box. And before that wasn't being done. There was no one doing that. I literally got a job where I would go out and I'd film myself fishing a lure and then get to be paid for that. And they ended up going out of business. And when they did, Mystery Tackle Box and Lucky Tackle Box both reached out to me to have me do that for them. And so I ended up going with Lucky Tackle Box and had a fantastic time doing that for a number of years. And that opened up, once again, all kinds of other opportunities. But before that, Lucky Tackle Box, they didn't have a person creating content. When FLW called me, they said, hey, we're looking to start FLW Live. Travis, you seem to be really evolving in the social media side of things, and the younger anglers and the newer age of stuff. Would you be willing to come over and do that with us? And so it's just been, I look forward to doing jobs that did not currently exist. And that is always a motivation, always like a sign that bass fishing is evolving. All these new jobs, literally companies are now creating budgets for things that didn't exist. You know that the sport is evolving and moving along.
Yeah, that's awesome. I agree with you. I share that, where as long as I'm in fishing and I'm enjoying what I'm doing and my passion is still relevant, then I'm content. I don't want to be a big tournament director on a stage. I don't want to, and I don't necessarily even want to, be a professional angler and fish, for a living. Just because for me, I think that I had that plan, or not, I would say plan, because I never put a plan in place, but I had that idea that maybe it's what I wanted to do until, I got some conversations and talking to a bunch of people, and there's one line from an angler that I heard was, I barely ever get to fun fish because I'm spending so much time practicing and then competing, and therefore you're managing fish, that I don't ever get to go out and, quote unquote, I don't get to go out and whack them. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, that kind of scares me. Like, I always want to go out with the goal of just crushing them every time I'm out there. It's like, as long as I'm enjoying fishing and I'm able to be in the industry, then I'm content. So I think that has been the new goal in place for me. So I agree with you there. It's 100%. As long as you're enjoying what you're doing, that's all that matters.
That's fantastic. That brings up an excellent point. My younger brother is very spiritually driven. Does a lot of meditation. Takes a little acid now and again, and wanders into the woods to discover. It's to contemplate the meaning of life and everything. And he has a lot of deep things to think about. And one of his things that he always talks about is like, be careful what you dream. Be very specific at what your intentions are, what you want in life, because you may get it. And when you do, you want to make sure that you got exactly what you wanted. And to say, hey, I want to make a living bass fishing. That would be the dream come true. Well, if you once again get that living and all of a sudden you're like, I don't ever get to actually enjoy it anymore. Well, then you didn't dream the right thing. You didn't know actually what you wanted. You were being too vague. You got your dream, your little dream came true, but you didn't dream. You weren't dreaming the right dream. You weren't guiding your life the right way. And that goes for every aspect of life, is that you should be very specific on what's going to make you happy, and you'll be able to say no to the right things, and you'll be able to say yes to the right things as well. That will lead you to a dream that when your dreams come true, they are the dreams that you wanted to come true.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and that's the goal. So that's awesome. That's a great way to look at it for sure. Well, dude, we're gonna wrap things up a little bit here. I got 2 questions that I like to ask at the end of the podcast.
Well, hold on. I got one story. I got to tell you. You brought up Bass Talk Live multiple times.
Of course, yeah.
This goes into your, this fishing industry is so intertwined. It is, it's amazing that if you help people or you interact with people, have a good experience, it comes back around in so many different ways. The Justin Lucas thing now, I've now interviewed him for a million different things. We've stayed in touch, but I don't even know when this was, probably 8 years ago. There was a show being put together, another circuit that was going to be the World Series of Bass. And it was going to be this $10,000 buy-in that you fish these regions and you make it. You're going to compete for $1 million prize. You're going to be the biggest prize tournament, and this really big deal. And to launch it, they were going to have a reality show that they were going to promote on television. That was going to be the build-up to this new tournament circuit they were going to release. Okay. And so they did this casting for the World Series of Bass reality show, and it was just where you do all these kind of crazy contests, smallest fish or most fish, and all these different things on a lake. And so I submitted my video, was picked to be on the show with, I think there was 8 anglers. So went out there, and Matt Pangrak was one of the anglers too, and he was just beginning his career. And so that's where we met for the first time, and have stayed in touch ever since then, and really crossed paths a million different ways. But we had never heard of each other until that point where we met there. We got to spend a few days together, laugh, and get to know each other, and then going off and really. And that was a great meeting point that we've been able to help each other out a lot of times along the way from there.
That's awesome. I hadn't seen exactly. It comes back, to my point earlier, is I would have never known that unless I had you on here. I might have figured it out 10 years down the road and somebody brought it up, but I never knew that was in existence.
And Matt will bring that up every once in a while on the show too, but there is no evidence that ever existed. It's not online. It aired on television for I think maybe there were supposed to be 7 episodes. Only 6 even aired, and then the whole thing just imploded and it just totally disappeared. And so there's absolutely you couldn't find anything unless myself or one of the contestants brings it up every now and again.
That's awesome. That's crazy. I'm gonna have to tune into the live and see if I can poke some fun at Matt. Then that would be interesting. See and get him to talk about it. But yep. That's awesome, man. Well, cool. So before we get into these last 2 questions, I like to ask everyone before we end the podcast, is there, where can people keep up with you on your adventures? Is there any social or anything you want to shout out there?
I'm kind of all over the board. The project that I'm currently working on is a project called Bass Tackle X, so they can follow me on social on that one. My personal one is travis.h2o on Instagram. But what I actually really like to do is rather than work on my own brand, I've always been one that enjoys helping another brand work out. And so with Lucky Tackle Box, that was where I existed. I parted ways with them and kind of moved on to the next thing. And so there's 2 projects, the Bass Tackle X and STIX Fishing. I own a rod company. I founded a rod company with my partner, Nick, the Informative Fisherman. Mm-hmm. And we created the first complete set of bass rods. So it's 6 rods designed to fish all lures and techniques. And it was something that we thought should have existed long ago. Golf has golf clubs. You would never go golfing without a full set of golf clubs. Now you should never go bass fishing without a full set of bass rods. Yeah. And so we've been very excited. That's really done well over the last 2 years. And that was, something that I saw another opportunity in the fishing industry, something that I believe should be done that wasn't being done, and we got to do it and really bring it into the market. And now just recently we're validated that another major company in the industry, Favorite Rods, just now announced that they are going to be coming out with a set of rods. And so we believe this is where everyone is going to go. And Favorite Fishing just validated that by being the second company now to create a set. The only reason we believe that all companies aren't going this way yet is because they have to figure out how not to cannibalize their sales on single rods. The way the industry has existed is that they just keep creating different rods for every single technique that comes out. And then they create different price points. So you end up having 60, 70 rods in a company where you're like, what rods am I supposed to buy? Yeah. And none of them have really tried to simplify that. And so you're going to see now all companies moving over to this set style. They just have to figure out how that's done without saying we were doing it wrong up until this point.
Yeah, that's awesome. So would you have so you have your set, correct? And I've seen the sticks and everything. So are there different levels of these groups? Like, do you have a premium or a beginner, or
we put out some goals. Remember, I said always try to make sure you have your goals too when you get into something. And so our goals were to create. We believe everyone wanted $100 rod, because this was when the rod industry, everyone was creating a rod company. Everyone was saying that they were all saying they were different for the same reasons. They were saying we use quality components. We had our pros design these rods, and they're at a great price. That was their three things that they said that they were different. And everyone said the same thing, and they were saying that's why they were different. And so we said, nobody wants to spend more than $100. $100 is like, you have $100, you get one rod. And that's where we thought that you could get a quality rod for it. You could build one at $100 price point. And then we wanted, obviously, the set. So we created that set. But to actually create a quality rod at $100, we cut out the retailer. So we actually only sell online, so that we can sell a rod that would normally retail for $150, $180 in a tackle shop. We can sell that rod for $100, so that our quality can compete with any other rod on the market at a $100 price point. And then when you buy the entire set, it actually is only $500. So you get 6 rods for $500. They're about $83 a piece. And so with that, we really focused on that one level. That one price point was the $100 for each rod, about $83 for the when you buy the entire set. And that was to really be able to stay focused. Eventually, we may end up looking at a higher line, but we really wanted that working man all-around set that a tournament angler can use. Even somebody who's just getting into fishing can say, hey, okay, I want your guys 2 spinning rods, or I want your guys hybrid spinning rod and your hybrid bait casting rod to get started, and then I'll increase my set out as I learn more techniques and things. And so this is a rod that the person that's finally committing to being serious in bass fishing can buy, and they're not going to have to buy a better rod down the road. Where that's always been my career, has been literally as I advance in bass fishing, I've had to buy better rods. The second I buy a better rod, I'm like, all these ones suck now. I have to get rid of these and buy more higher quality. And these rods you will not need to replace with better quality. You can add more rods to that. You can have the set of 6 and then buy your super specific, $300 finesse rod that you want for an exact technique, or your giant swim bait rod or something like that. But this will be your core rods that if you're learning a new technique or fishing, out in the day and you want to pick up something different, you'll have a rod for that technique.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's an extremely interesting concept. That's pretty cool to see it kind of grow. That's awesome, dude. I didn't actually realize that you had created STIX. So
yes. Nick, along with Nick, the Informative Fisherman, him and I are the 2 co-founders, and one of the most common questions we got on our YouTube channels was, what rod should I use? Okay, I just learned a technique from you. What rod do I need? And it was very difficult, because you didn't want to tell somebody to go out and buy a new rod just because they're learning a new technique. But also, if they had a couple rods, you would be able to tell them which rod to use. But then first you have to be like, hey, what rods do you have? And I don't know all the, like, they'd be explaining what rods they had. I'd be looking online to figure out what rod they were. And it was just a mess. And there was no like industry standard of what rods were. And so the way we did is we even numbered the rods 1 through 6. And that is how they relate to the other rods in terms of power. So if you're using a bigger lure or you're going into thicker, fishing thicker cover or something like that, you just move up the power. So you'll have a little bit more backbone, a little bit more power to fish that. And if you're using lighter stuff, you can move down. And you'll always find that rod that'll work best for it. And it just made things so much more easier to explain how people can actually go out. And it even, us explaining that concept helps people even pick out the rod that they own that isn't a STIX rod to actually use the technique we're teaching, because it gives some kind of baseline to actually teach you.
Huh. I never really put that into perspective. That's interesting. I like it.
It is. It's something I don't like I said, I don't like doing anything that I don't think is moving the industry forward is something that it needs to happen. And we put that out there, and it's been really well received. And we actually started with no money. We had no money to actually start this thing. And we're like, okay, so how do we start it? How do we get this thing working then? And what we did is we did pre-sales. We said, let's just see right off the bat if people are going to want this. And we paired up with AFCO and got some cool clothing and stuff and offered that in our pre-sale. And we ended up raising $30,000 for our initial payment of the rods on pre-sales, and we're able to get our first shipment in and go from there and build a good foundation of a community with that first round as well, because we got them clothing, we got them shirts, hats, buffs, and all the cool stuff for them to have. So they became good representatives of our brand.
That's awesome, dude. So how long did it take you, kind of like from the idea to actually getting that first shipment? Like what was the timeline?
2 years.
Okay, wow. So that was a lot of patience then.
Yeah, and it was something that I wish that was 2 years of just hard working at that, but things just kind of ebb and flow. There's times things really start moving forward quickly, and there's times you just hit barriers like money. Everyone runs into money. Oh, if I had money, I could do this. The reality is, in business, you learn that the companies they fail for 2 reasons: not enough money. But the other reason is too much money. And if you have not enough money and you find strategic ways to move forward, you're actually going to be built better than if you were just given the right amount of money to start that company, because you'll make too many mistakes that money will cover up. So that's been a blessing that we've had to be creative without having a lot of cash flow.
Awesome. That's pretty interesting. That's awesome. I don't think many people would have thought of doing it that way.
Well, it's something that, with the bass fishing thing, and here's this is good for everyone in the bass fishing world that's trying to make it in the bass fishing world. I've always said the bass fishing world is 10 years behind the real world. And so that provides a lot of opportunities. You can look to see what's working in the real world and then bring it into the bass fishing world as futuristic ideas and things that aren't being done and that can take off. And so that's, doing pre-sales and stuff, that's something that I've seen other companies do in other spaces, and just basically how can we do that for our space, and then use connections I had within the industry. The one being AFCO, be like, hey, AFCO, Nick and I are on all kinds of YouTube videos up. We'll wear your clothing for X amount of time if you will give us X amount of shirts, buffs, and these things that we can then give to our pre-sales that are incentive to sign up early. So it worked out. AFCO got a great part of it. Our customers benefited. We got the money we needed to start the company. So really everybody got something out of that. And it's, and that's what we look to do as we move forward with everything.
That's awesome. I like the strategy behind it.
I enjoy talking about bass fishing business as well. Once again, I enjoy it. I look at it as progression of the sport. Favorite fishing, them creating their own set. That's just validation that we are helping this sport move forward.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting, very interesting. I feel like I could talk for another couple hours asking you just business related questions.
I can always talk. Yeah, I enjoy the business side just as much as I enjoy being out actually catching bass now.
Yeah, no, 100%, because you can kind of get like a different mindset and ways to go about things. It's cool. But I don't want to keep you for too long. We've already hit an hour, which is actually, I feel like the hour's blown by. But
yeah, absolutely.
So I'll ask you these last 2 questions real quick here, and then I won't take up too much of your quarantine down in the good old state of Hawaii. But first question for you is, if you could have dinner with 3 different people to sit down and pick their brain, who would you invite and why? They could be past, present, It doesn't have to be fishing industry.
Interesting. You're supposed to give me these things way ahead of time, man.
I like to stump people.
Who do I find very intriguing? Some of these guys within the fishing industry, I've kind of gotten to sit down and have dinner with a lot of guys. Let's see.
Yeah, and they don't even have to be fishing industry. They could be anybody.
Yeah.
Childhood hero, somebody. I don't know.
You know, actually, okay, so actually one random, and I think that's just because I've kind of read some stuff just recently as well, is Tony Robbins. He's a motivational guy, and he really pushes the envelope. I can't even remember the other guy's name, Justin Vandersloot or whatever. I always mess up his name. Or it's Vanders. I don't even know his first name. Vandersloot. He's the guy. Gary, yes. Gary, he's the one that invented. Yeah. Yes, Vanderchek. And I'm sorry, I'm terrible with people's names, and so I'm butchering. I can't remember his name, butchering his name. But it's more I am really intrigued by his ideas and is really looking at things differently and moving forward. And then let's see. You can see that all these guys are going to be people that really exist in a different plane of reality. I love guys that just follow their own things, and only afterwards you can look and validate, oh yeah, they were right. Like they went off they walked their own path and either led everybody that way or just saw that was the way everyone was going to be going and were able to get ahead. But I really, going against the grain, doing something different is a very challenging thing in life because everyone will tell you to go one way. And when you go a different way, you're going to take a lot of negative criticism. And that's a difficult thing for people to do. And it goes against it. Really, it also is saying people are doing it incorrect. And so I really admire people who do that. So number 3, I'm buying time for number 3 here. As I'm wondering if I should go in the fishing industry or not in the fishing industry. Because who have I liked sitting down? You know what? I'm going to throw a random one that I have gotten to spend time, and I always enjoy spending more time with this guy, is David Dudley.
Okay.
David Dudley is one of the most interesting minds that I have come across. He will tell you bass fishing is very simple. Do not overthink things, but then when he goes into deeper about how simple it is, you realize how complicated and how deep he thinks into it. And he's saying it's a simple thought, and it is when he says each individual thought, but he has, millions of these thoughts going on at all times, and he's taking in so much data. It's just every single time I listen to what he says, he has a different way of looking at things than I do. We can look at the same 2 things, and I will be 100% sure of what I'm saying, and I'm 100% sure I'm right. And then he will say something that I will be like, yeah, you're saying this, you are 100% right also. And it doesn't make mine not right, but you are right as well. And I'm really interested in how you came, I like the way you looked at that angle. And so David Dudley, every single time I have a conversation with that guy, I grow as a person seeing things in different ways.
Yeah. I got the opportunity to speak to him for a while with Fred Cantawi, our rod designer at the Classic, and just listening to him speak and talk about certain subjects that him and Fred were vividly discussing. It was just kind of mind-blowing. And obviously you see a little bit in his YouTube videos that he comes out with these different topics that he talks about. And it's just it's definitely somebody I would agree with you in there, that it's definitely somebody that I could listen to and feel like I get lost in time just listening to what he says. And wondering what goes on.
You guys, you mentioned Justin Lucas is a guy you listen to, and he is a guy who tells it how it is. He grew up on the West Coast, where you do have to be versatile. There are guys, you go to these different lakes that are so different from each other that they have all these sticks waiting to just pounce on you. And you've got to adapt these different ways of fishing. From Lake Shasta, you could be fishing 60 to 80 feet deep with finesse stuff. You could be at Clear Lake fishing real shallow, heavy tackle stuff. And then you could be going to the California Delta. It's got tidal conditions. So there's just so much range that really you can be like, I'm not a master at any of those, but then you take that on the road on tour and stuff like Justin did. And because you've had your butt kicked and you really had to adapt to all these different situations, that you can really have success now being a very diverse angler. Well, David Dudley is another person to listen to that as well, because he goes, a bass is a bass. And he starts with that mentality. but then he adapts that to the different situations he comes to at all these different lakes.
Yeah, and the multiple AOIs definitely speak for that.
Yeah. So he has a resume to show that way of thinking is a winning strategy.
Yes.
And he says stuff. He throws out secrets every once in a while that blow my mind, and he will just throw them out there, and all of a sudden I'll be like, "Wait, explain that more," and then he'll be like, "Oh, Bubba, I don't really like talking a whole lot about that, but yeah, this is what," and he'll start expanding, and you're like, "Oh my gosh!" And he has rules that he follows that are absolutely amazing that have helped him become a successful angler. And so that's why I say always listen to what he's saying, because you will pick up things that'll help you in fishing, but that'll also help you in life.
Yeah. It's kind of off topic, but speaking about David Dudley, I would love watching the FLW live, and you'd see Brian Thrift's perfectly clean boat deck, and then they go over to Dudley, and it's just organized chaos everywhere. But they're both as efficient, which is
yes, and you can see. And that's where I always tell, there is no right answer to winning. You've got to figure out, you got to know about yourself. You got to know the type of person you are, and make sure that you are doing that to the best degree you can. The anglers that really have success have figured out that, know themselves, know their strengths, know what they're looking for, and just really throttle down on that. A great example, how about John Cox? He's one of the hottest anglers right now on all the tours. He's literally fishing everything, and he is unstoppable. And you're not going to find John Cox out in the middle of the lake fishing offshore ledges. He knows what he's good at, and he finds that. Whether that's just one back creek in the entire lake, he's going to find the conditions he needs, and then he's going to be competitive with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll do my last question for you, and pretty much just straight to the point. We'll wrap it up after this. Is your favorite fishing memory?
Ooh. Favorite fishing memory. I have a lot of, I mentioned my brother being very spiritual and stuff. Like I do make sure I reflect quite a bit, and I'm thankful for the moments that I'm in. You know what? I think I had a really great moment. The last real one that sticks out in my mind, where I'm like, oh man, this is surreal. This is a really cool situation. I am progressing. I have to give, my childhood dreams. This is definitely one of them. And I got to make sure I sit and kind of soak this moment up for a second. I was at Rainy Lake up in, it's on the border of Minnesota and Canada. Okay. And we were up there filming, and we're filming for the Scott Martin Challenge. So I've been invited up there, and we brought a bunch of YouTubers up there. Tyler's Real Fishing, Noah Pescatelli, Andrew Flair, Jake the Almighty. All these big YouTubers were up there. And then Scott Martin was there, but then his dad came up, Roland Martin. Now, I grew up, so I've been around the YouTubers. I've been around Scott Martin, and those have been fun experiences, kind of growing up with those guys or being in my career with those guys. But Roland was someone that I used to wake up on Saturday, Sunday mornings at 5 a.m. because it was real early shows out west, and watch guys like Roland and just dream about living like that, feeling like I'm on the boat with them. That was the only content you could consume back then. And so I get off the boat, the houseboat. It's one of the most beautiful fishery you've ever seen in your entire life. Just this beautiful forest. It's just still, calm water. First thing in the morning, we got coffee, and I walk outside, drinking coffee in the front of the houseboat, and Roland Martin is walking around in his underwear, his whitey tighties. I mean, and he's older. He's got that old grandpa body, dude. Out, and he's sitting there drinking his coffee. He's talking to the cameraman, barking orders like, "All right, what if we get the shot from here? When we start off, let's start here, and the sunlight's right." And I remember sitting there, I'm like, this is surreal right now. This is an amazing moment that I'm literally sitting here with one of my childhood idols, and I looked up to this guy so much, and now I'm just watching it. I never in a million years would I have dreamed of this whole situation. And so I kind of just sat in the coffee, stared at Roland in his underwear, and just took it all in. And that was a definite moment that stuck in. Like, this is a milestone that things are going the way I wanted them to. This is what I was dreaming up. I never dreamed about, and I didn't spend nights dreaming about Roland in his underwear, but being at that moment, I was like, this kind of is what I was dreaming. This is amazing. Yeah. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I love hearing the behind the scenes kind of thing like that. That's incredible. I mean, that's a story you're gonna remember forever. That's awesome. That's awesome, dude. Well, dude, we've been going on almost an hour and 15 minutes, so I'm gonna let you go here. I just want to say I appreciate you for taking the time out of your day and hopping on the podcast. It's been a blast. And I really hope to have you on again here soon once we get some FLW tournaments in, and we can do like a little season recap.
Absolutely. I'll check in with you anytime you want. And to the viewers, if there's still viewers that listen for this entire hour and 15 minutes, thanks for sticking around. I hope that this gave you some kind of motivation to keep doing what you're doing, or to start on some new endeavor that you've been thinking about doing, or you've been saying the fishing industry needs this. Go do it. Do it. The fishing industry needs it. And you know what? Even if you do something and it doesn't work out, you're going to learn from it. But also, you may motivate somebody else to go do to give someone to start to go do something that does work out. And so it's all about trying to push this thing in the right direction. And then Bailey, what you do, man, this is great. You're helping bring up these different paths, these different histories that people have, and it motivates people. It gives them confidence that we don't all come from the same fishing background. I know we look at Scott Martin, right, and we go, oh man, I wish I was born to a famous bass fishing dad. That then like that was you can always see what you don't have. But the reality is the guys that are making it, the guys that are doing this have just taken their love and their passion that any person, no matter where you come from, can experience and get to that level. And they've found a way to make it work for them in the fishing world. And you helping bring that up is, I'm sure you get motivation when you have these interviews and stuff, but you also are giving that to a lot of your viewers and things, and really showing that how passionate this group of anglers really is.
I really appreciate that. It does mean a lot. But yeah, as long like we mentioned earlier, as long as there's passion, I mean, that's all that matters, right? It can lead you to a long road, and as long as that passion stays there, that's all that matters. So I super appreciate it, and I really do appreciate you taking the time. It's been a blast.
Absolutely, man. As we say out here in Hawaii, aloha, brother.
You take care, Travis. We'll talk soon.
All right, thanks, Bailey.
Bye. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed that podcast with Travis. We talked for a long time, almost an hour and 15 minutes. That was probably the longest podcast we've had in a while. So I just want to say thank you to Travis for coming on for a while, dedicating your time to talk to me on the show. It's definitely awesome to hear all these different stories and things that have happened in history of competitive bass fishing and bass fishing in general, and the behind the scenes and how people get to from one stage in their life to the next. It's an awesome time hearing and learning about such things. So I hope you guys enjoyed it and learned as much as I did. That was an absolute blast. Make sure to go down below and keep up with Travis and his adventures. If you're looking for a great gentleman to learn from and kind of see how they do things, Travis is a great individual for that. So if you guys aren't already, subscribe to the Ibra Outdoors YouTube channel, and you can find our podcast practically on every podcast application out there: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor app, and the Angler app. You can pretty much find us anywhere and give us a listen. And I hope you guys are enjoying the podcast. I appreciate your support so much. So if you guys enjoy the podcast, especially this is for the Apple Podcast listeners, I would super appreciate if you guys could go down and leave a review. Head down there, because the more reviews we get on the podcast, the more notoriety it gets. And that's important to me, because the most notoriety that this podcast gets as it grows more, it gives these anglers, these dedicated, passionate people that come on my podcast, a bigger platform to show themselves and share their story with the world. And I know it's obviously I'm receiving growth from it, but I think it's more important that these people I'm having on here get highlighted on a bigger stage, which I think is just awesome, because they definitely see some growth from it, and that's important to me. So thank you guys again, and we'll see you guys next time.